when you go undercover, do you have to do anything, change your look? Do you have to get tattoos? Do you bulk up? Do you take acting classes? Do you interview people that used to actually be criminals in this world to kind of like get the slang down? Or do you just kind of put it together as you go?
Well, my appearance evolved over time. Like I had an undercover persona, a cover story as a gun runner and a debt collector.
Right.
And so like I grew up in had a very innocent life. So I had to train for that. I had to become educated in the elements of that. Talking, like you said, talking to people who were involved in that lifestyle and trying to learn from them. But here's the thing. I never really ever tried to pretend that I was someone that I wasn't, because I always felt like you have to respect the intelligence of the people you're working on, of the suspects and the targets. And if you underestimate the people you're working on, that's a dangerous game to play. So I was always very respectful of the people that I was investigating, at least respectful of their intelligence. I'll tell you a story when I wasn't and when it betrayed me. I was working in an investigation in Georgia, and the target of the investigation owned a bar and a tattoo shop. So part of trying to accelerate the trust and credibility element, I had decided I was going to drop my wallet in his bar intentionally. And then in my plan, I would call him the next day and say, hey man, the last place I saw my wallet was at your place. Did you find it? Knowing that he'd find it, knowing that he'd go through it and search everything in there and see that what he was finding on his own was going to validate my credibility, would accelerate my credibility.
You see your ID in there. This guy is who he says he is.
All my pocket litter, all the stuff in there. And it would just help advance and speed up the credibility process. So I call him and he says, yeah, I found it. Come on in. Come and pick it up. So I go to his tattoo shop to grab my wallet. So he invites me into his office and he closes the door and he padlocks the door from the inside. It's got like a gate latch on it and he puts a padlock on it. And I'm thinking like who locks their door from the inside? Yeah. Like he's making sure no one's coming in from the outside. Yeah. Right. So he pushes the wallet in front of me and there was a business card in my wallet that was from the Outlaws Motorcycle Club in Joliet, Illinois, that I had obtained legitimately. It was just part of my pocket litter, right? So he pushes this card in front of me and he says, what's the story on this? And I said, dude, I lived in Chicago for a while. I, hung out in some spots in Joliet. Dude gave me this card and said, if you ever have a problem, if you ever need help, man, look out, reach out for me. I can help you out. That was the beginning and the end of that story for that card.
Yeah.
It's like, look harder at it. And he pushes this jeweler's magnifying glass in front of me, the kind with the big dial, right? So I'm looking at this card through this jeweler's glass. And when I look up, he's got his elbows bipoded on his desk and he's holding a pistol in my face. He's like, what do you see? And I'm looking at it and I don't have an answer. And that's the worst thing in undercover, is to not have an answer or an explanation for something that's on your person, something that's in your house, something that's in your car. You better be able to explain how and why it got there. And my explanation was, man, I got this thing years ago. It's been in that wallet for a long time. In the very corner was a tiny, tiny pinhole in the corner of this card. He said, you know what that looks like to me? That looks like some cop took this card and had it thumbtacked on the bulletin board behind his desk as a trophy. And I'm thinking to myself, that's exactly what it was. He had it figured out. So my story, I had underestimated the intelligence and the willingness to examine every tiny detail of that wallet. Right. And he caught me flat-footed. I had no other choice but to stick with my story and to say, dude, I can't explain the pinhole in that card. I don't know how it got there. It was there when I got it. And so we moved beyond it, But like I'm being interrogated. I know I'm weak. I know my story's got flaws and got holes in it. And I got a 45 pointed in my face.
Do you have your shit on you?
Yeah, but it's like, you know, you know the scene. Dude, you think you can outdraw a trigger squeeze?
No.
You want to outdraw a trigger squeeze? See if you can outdraw this trigger squeeze, dude.
He's got the drop on you.
Yeah, unless you can run away from here at faster than 1,500 feet per second, I'm going to catch up to you. My bullet's going to catch up to you. And so ultimately I got through it. The moral of that long story was that I had underestimated the intelligence of the suspect I was working on. I did not do that again.
Okay, so just finishing this up, so you just convinced the guy and he put his gun away?
I think that I had laid enough groundwork with him and I had stuck to my story, which was flawed. It was a partial explanation, but like what choice did I have? There was a pinhole in that card. He had decided what it meant. He was correct, but I couldn't corroborate his explanation. I couldn't say, dude, you got me. You know, this was pinned up on the back of my.
Yeah, I know, but how did you convince him? Did he keep working with you after that? Or
I just held my ground.
Did he keep working with you after that incident?
Yeah, we moved forward.
And did you end up arresting him?
He was, yeah. We ended up moving forward. There was nothing glamorous about it. There was nothing glamorous about that case. But the moral of the story was that I didn't give the guy I was working on credit that he deserved, and he outsmarted me.
Now, do you put that in the indictment? Hey, this guy drew his gun on a federal officer.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't know it was a federal officer. He just thought it was a dude. Like, that paranoia kicked in.
Yeah.
We talked about earlier. He was inherently paranoid. That's.
So you're a very disciplined guy. I would have waited till he lowered his gun and I would have blasted him because that would have pissed me off. You know,
I was more scared than pissed.
Oh, of
to
course,
be honest with you.
That too. Wow.
And which is part of undercover work is that your heart is racing 1,000,000 miles an hour, but your hand can't shake.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So tell us about your first week on the job. Take us back to 1987 when you start working undercover.
Yeah. I got hired in November of 1987 on a Monday. I raised my right hand. I swore my oath to the government and to protect the Constitution and all those elements of our oath. And it was an amazing day for me. I was and still am honored to be given a badge and a gun and be asked to stand up on behalf of good and innocent people in the communities I worked on against the predators. I took that very serious. That was important to me. 4 days later, I am on an arrest scenario. I'm not on the point. I'm so far removed from the action that like I can barely see what's going on. So ATF is running an operation to arrest a convicted felon who was in possession of a firearm. One man, one gun case. So we're surveillance. I'm like on this like third tier of the perimeter of the surveillance. Dude shows up at his house. He sees the initial team moving in on him and he takes off and he's on the run. Well, you know, man, I didn't have any training. I didn't have any experience. And I just jumped in the chase. I'm like, this is what we do. Right. So I'm chasing this dude.
It's a foot chase, right?
Yeah. It's a foot chase. I was not fast enough to play in the NFL, but by cop standards, I was Usain Bolt. Like I could outrun most people, right? I wasn't fast enough to play in the NFL, but I was fast enough to beat cops running. Right. So I'm passing people and I'm chasing him down. So this dude, we're in his neighborhood. He serpentines around and he's gone, vanished. And I was so pissed and I was defeated. I was like, man, you know what? Like I had a chance to put my hands on this dude and I couldn't catch him. And my partners, my peers, I'm brand new on the job, were mocking me. They're like, oh, now we know why you're a federal agent, dude. NFL stands for not for long when you run as fast as you do, right? You can't chase down a 140-pound junkie in biker boots. No wonder you couldn't make it, right? And it was good-natured teasing, right? But I was pissed. Well, we decide to like re-scour the area. Let's continue to look for him. So I'm out searching, and this dude like pops up from some deep grass, like underneath a trailer. And before I can even react, I've got my gun out, but like down at the ground. Before I can react, this dude is up and closing in on me. And he's like, like, today's your last day. Put that gun down. Like he like had the drop on me. Right. And I start to plane my gun up to get a sight picture. And he's like, I'll kill you where you stand. And like, he gets around behind me. Like I had freaking like put my gun away. I'm like, this is going to turn into hand-to-hand combat. Right. I had reholstered my gun. So as he's closing in on me and he's got the gun extended, I'm like thinking, I'm going to pop on that gun and freaking twist it and get out of this. Right. And as he gets like within striking distance, he pulls that gun in real close and he had it anchored against his chest, and I had lost all my leverage. He swings around behind me. He's got an arm around my neck. He's got the gun to my head, and he's walking me towards one of the government cars that we had used to arrive on the scene. It was a two-door Monte Carlo. And he pushes me in the front seat and he slides in the back seat behind me. And he's like doing, let's go. Let's get me the out of here. Wow. Right. And I'm like, and so now the other agents see what's going on and they're starting to close in, and I see like help coming. Right. And he's starting to panic. Let's go. Get me the out of here. So my first reaction was I saw a telephone pole probably 30, 40 yards in front of us. And I was like, I'm going to freaking ram this car into this telephone pole as fast as I can get it going in the next 40 yards, and we'll just see what happens. Right. So I go to start the car, and then plan B kicked in, and I had the keys in my hand, and I pulled the keys out of the ignition and dropped them to the floor. And I'm like, I dropped the keys. And as I leaned forward to the floorboard to grab the keys, he's trying to ride with me, to stay with me. The other agents have now arrived at the car. The gun comes off my head, and this 5-second like lead and glass storm of bullets and chaos takes place. He shoots me in the back, point blank in the back. He gets shot to
yeah. Do you think he got the shot off before they started shooting into the car?
You know what, dude? It was so chaotic. It would be impossible for me to tell.
This is like your own little Waco.
This, like, you take the worst Tony Scott, Quentin Tarantino, like movie shootout.
Yeah.
And this was 1,000,000 times worse, 1,000,000 times faster, 1,000,000 times more violent.
Right.
And so bam, 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 20 rounds fired like that. And so I'm like,
what's the danger of you getting hit by your partners?
Yeah, I think that they were pretty dialed in on the target.
Right.
They weren't just randomly blasting into the car. They had sight picture. They had focus. Yeah. Right. They're hitting him. They're lighting him up.
Right.
But
where does he get hit? Does he get hit in the chest, the head?
He was like all X-ringed, all X-ringed all over the torso. Right.
Wow.
So,
but he managed to pop.
He pops me, and all of a sudden, it's like the worst case of having the wind knocked out of you you've ever had. I can't breathe in or out. Can't breathe in or out. And I look down, and there's a hole in the front of my chest, and I knew everything came from behind, and I'm like, this is right. So they pull my partners pull the car door open. They pull me out. They pull the suspect out of the back seat. He's like got the death rattle, man. His eyes have freaking rolled back and he's gurgling. This dude is ventilated, man. And I'm laying there, and they pull my shirt open, and there's blood coming out of my chest like you're holding your thumb over the end of a garden hose. It's spraying out. And this big pool of blood is growing around me. And this crinkled up old like potato chip bag like blows across, and it sticks in the mud, sticks in the blood and the dirt, and it blows past. And I'm back, and like my eyes are rolling back in my head, and I'm surrounded by like single wide trailers with like aluminum awnings falling off of them, cars on blocks, rusted out swing sets, dog shit. And I'm like, I'm going to freaking die in the middle of all this, you know? And the thing is with the feds, we get paid every 2 weeks. I hadn't gotten a paycheck yet. Like it was on the house. I comped them that one. So they pushed me back into the vehicle that we just had the shooting in the back seat where the suspect got shut up. Now I'm laying where he got shut up. I'm laying in his blood and my blood. And my supervisor jumps in the car, races me to the hospital.
Is it painful yet? Or is it just a numb?
You know what? That's such a good question. And I'll tell you, I was so scared. I don't know. I don't remember it hurting. I don't remember being in pain.
So much adrenaline.
I remember choking. I remember not being able to breathe. I remember glass, like shattered window glass falling on me and blood squirting out of my chest.
And why did you guys not have vests on?
Well, good point. Initially, we did. Initially, like I was vested up, right? So we go into this chase and then the suspect eludes us. We regroup and dude, I'd been on the job 4 days. Straight freaking idiot. I had no idea what I was doing. I took my vest off. Like you don't do that.
Yeah.
And then go back into a pursuit or into a, looking for this dude. You don't do that.
Wow.
And so, they raced me to the hospital and they pulled me out of the car and they put me on a gurney and I'm being rolled into the emergency room and I'm laying back and I can see like a nurse, I can see her face and I can see her hat like over me. And she pushed me in and I said, am I going to die? And she looks down and she said, we're not sure yet, baby. And I was like, bad bedside manner, man. Tell me what I want to hear. Give me the answer I want to hear. Even if you're lying to me, tell me what I want to hear.
That's right.
So
Tell
I did
me
in
it's
the
the
emergency
biggest
room,
you've ever had.
and I'm suffocating, man. I can't breathe. I'm spitting blood. Blood's coming out of my ears, out of my mouth. It's pumping out of my chest. And I hear the doctor say, get me a Finocchio retractor. And like layman terms, I don't know what that is. That retractor, ultimately, I found is a rib spreader. And he said, like, you know what, kid? He goes, this is going to be unpleasant. Just hang in there with me. They scalpel my side open. Like, nothing.
They don't give you any kind of numbing agent before?
I mean, they're working fast.
Yeah.
They scalpel my side open. He takes this like screwdriver type thing and pops the cartilage out between the ribs underneath my arm. And then he puts this retractor in there and it's like a ratchet. And he twists it or cranks it and it slowly separates your ribs. And then they put a chest tube in, which has this like electronic suction bucket at the end of it. And they put that tube in. And then all of a sudden these stewed tomatoes start getting sucked out of your chest into this collection bucket.
What is that? That stewed tomato. What is that?
They put this chest tube in, it was blood clots and it was just blood that had been filling up in my chest.
Okay. So the point of that is to get the blood out of your lung.
I had a deflated lung and the blood was further collapsing like my chest cavity. It was squeezing my lungs, which is why I couldn't breathe.
I see.
Because my lungs are getting squeezed with all the fluid collecting in there.
Okay.
They call that a sucking chest wound because as you try to breathe in, you're sucking in air and blood and you're not inflating your lung. You're further crushing your lung. Wow. They also call it a sucking chest wound just because it sucks. Right. It sucks to go through it.
So you could, if you died from that, you're literally like suffocating and kind of drowning in your own blood.
Yeah, absolutely. Whoa. Absolutely. So it was, and that was my 4th day at work.
But it went in and out though, the bullet, right?
It did. It was through and through. It like went in my back, went through my lung, narrowly missed my heart, and exited my chest on the left side.
But ultimately, that's a good thing. You'd rather have that than stay in
rather
there.
than having to dig a slug out. Right. I'm not a doctor. I don't know which would be better or worse, but it was what it was.
And then, so does your lung? How do you heal from that? Does the body naturally?
Yeah, ultimately, when they relieve that pressure on your lung and it allows you to start breathing and your lung can expand again. An interesting aspect to that story is my doctor was this still somewhat unknown trauma surgeon, very skilled trauma surgeon. Ultimately, his name's Richard Carmona. Ultimately, Dr. Carmona becomes the Surgeon General of the United States. He was an amazing, amazing, life-saving trauma surgeon. The dude saved my life. Wow. There's no doubt he saved my life. And he was a cop. He was on the sheriff's department SWAT team and was their trauma doctor and their medic. And he was like a point guy on the like an actual operator on their SWAT team. 2 weeks after I got shot, he got shot. My doctor got shot.
What?
This dude, like for a guest for your show, and I'll dial you in. Freaking like bring Dr. Carmona in.
Wow.
Like one of the most amazing personal stories. This dude like grew up in Harlem, was in trouble, went into the military, became a field medic, became a trauma surgeon, did like all kinds of like rescues, like rappelling out of helicopters to rescue people that were stranded, like in remote mountain areas, saved dozens of people in Tucson as a trauma surgeon. Right. Ultimately, the dude, Dr. Carmona he worked at the University of Arizona football games, like just as like an emergency doctor in the stadium. You have a heart attack, you have something, you got a guy there, right? He's on his way to University of Arizona football game. There's a carjacking taking place in front of him. He confronts the carjacker. He shoots the carjacker on his way to a football game now, and then performs CPR on the guy he just shot, waiting for the medics to get there. This dude is a like straight pipe hitting badass doctor, man.
Wow.
Anyway, the dude saved my life.
And this is Tucson, Arizona. Oh yes, and you've brought the shirt that you were wearing. Oh my God, this should be in a museum. Look at this artifact.
So this hole, am I looking at that camera? Yep. So that hole, that's where it went in my back.
What kind of gun was it?
It was a 38.
So that's a big slug.
It was a full metal jacket 38 round. Wow. So that's where the round went in, which doesn't look all that traumatic, right? But that hole there is where it exited my chest.
Wow.
And that was like that was only a short period of time of bleeding. They got my shirt off me pretty good, looking for like pretty quick.
How much time from when you got shot to when you were in the hospital getting the tube put in you?
I couldn't tell you. It was pretty fast.
But it's safe to say you had about a half an hour left of life, or maybe an hour, with the way you were bleeding, dude.
Yeah, I was, and like this in itself, as traumatic as that looks, that like I know people that have been through much worse. Yeah. Much worse. What's maybe interesting about this story is that it was 4 days on the job. It was traumatic. I'm not trying to like minimize that or have false humility about it. I know people that have been through much worse. My friend Jason Redman, who's a Navy SEAL, who was shot up, real like bullets in the face, bullets in like shot to. Like I tell him that story, and I showed him my shirt, and Jason's a friend of mine. He goes like, dude, he goes, that's a paper cut. Right. So like there's people that have been through much worse. I mean, there's kids that are coming home missing arms and legs and with traumatic brain injuries that like this is a walk in the park.